Okay, so somebody linked me this video by Aizen, which I'm kind of interested in checking out. We talk a lot about Dragonflight and like PvP participation, and things that could be better for solo shuffle, like trying to get healers involved and, you know, ratings being deflated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But apparently this video is about some of the struggles in PvE. And I know some people who watch my channel don't care about PvE, but I'm just kind of curious what this person has to say. So this is Aizen's, if Dragonflight looks good, then why are the numbers bad?
No flame, no flame. This is a legitimate, serious question. So please don't just join in just to comment, oh yeah, I knew the game was dying since they did that thing back in Wrath of the Lich King when I quit. Yeah, I agree, after they did that thing in Legion, I uninstalled and never played again. Talking seriously, this is a question that...
Just everyone... Yeah, you know, just wish we could really go back to MOP. That's when the game was the best.
Came up when trying to look up some numbers for a different kind of video, but looking at those numbers made me question, maybe made me wonder about the situation right now.
You know, I just immediately looking at this video, I can tell you one thing that is wrong with it. Well, it's not wrong, but there's only one comp in Mythic Plus right now, as far as I understand it. There's only one comp in Mythic Plus. So people like Mythic Plus, but ever since Evokers got added, there's one comp. Shadow Priest, Fire Mage, Evoker, Holy Paladin, Guardian Druid. That's it. That's like 95%. It's actually a ridiculous number. Like, if you think balance in PvP is bad, PvE and Mythic Plus balance is atrocious. Like, just absolutely atrocious.
For example, one of the first numbers you can look at is the current amount of population in Mythic Plus. Since we don't have the real numbers from Blizzard anymore, we haven't had them in a while, we can still try to gauge some numbers by, for example, looking at the unique characters completing a Mythic Plus key. And up to patch 10.1.5 of Season 2, the number is 2.5 million. Now, if you compare this to Dragonflight Season 1...
2.5 million who have completed a key. Okay.
The number is 6.7. So you went from 6.7 to 2.5, which is like a 2.5 times drop.
That's crazy, actually.
Characters in Mythic Plus. Now we have comparisons. We have comparisons because, for example, we can.
It's interesting. Okay, so one thing that's very interesting, and it's something that I've noticed in Dragonflight. So I feel like the different communities in Dragonflight as a whole are more segregated. It's really difficult to compare numbers from like Shadowlands. I wonder what he's gonna... Actually, let's look at the Shadowlands numbers and then I'll finish my thought.
Back to Shadowlands and notice that between Season 1, which had 8.2 million, and Season 2, which is 4 million,
oh my god,
it's a 50% drop of player base, which is not nearly as big as what we have now. We also have an even smaller drop from BFA Season 1, which is 4.9 million, to BFA Season 2, which is 4.3. So a very small drop.
Yeah, that's a really small drop. Anyways, what I was going to say, just really quickly, I was going to say it's interesting because myself, I have not done any Mythic Plus. Like, I don't know how it is for you guys, but I've actually done 0 Mythic Plus this expansion. I haven't even, like... outside of like doing 5 keys with like a few really close friends, I haven't done it competitively at all. And on the flip side, a lot of PvEers aren't trying PvP, and it's an unintended consequence of like splitting up the different gear, right? Like, if you want the best Mythic Plus gear, you do Mythic Plus. If you want the best PvP gear, you do PvP. And there's not really that overlap, you know? It's not like in Shadowlands where PvEers needed to do PvP to get their badge trinket, and that was your best in slot trinket. So there's not that overlap, which is good and bad. You know, like, obviously it's good because if you're a PvPer and all you want to do is PvP, great. But it just means the people that aren't necessarily interested in PvP, they don't even give it a shot. And the same goes for Mythic Plus, right?
In player base between Season 1 and Season 2 of BFA. Then I started thinking what's going on in the raid. Because, for example, if you look at the first tier of this expansion, let's not look at mythic raiding because that's, too small of a part of the player base to draw some numbers. You can look at heroic to see a much larger player base. If you go past the middle, besides the first freebie bosses, how many guilds, how many players went past the middle of the raid? It was, 13,500 in the first tier of this expansion compared to the first tier of Shadowlands, which was Castelnatria. It's not 13,500, it's 30,000 in Castelnatria. And then the tier before, which was Uldir, it's 27,000. Same goes for the second tier. The second tier of BFA was Balthazar Lore with 16,000. The second tier of Sanctum was 17,000, and now the second tier of Aberrus is 11.
This is just my own thing. Like, it's very interesting to see heroic numbers versus mythic numbers. Like, it's actually crazy to see how, I don't want to say how few people do the mythic raid, but it is very interesting to see how many more people are doing like the heroic raids. I know myself back in, I think I quit doing mythic raiding in Legion. Yeah, in Legion, I think, was the last time like I was actually in a guild and I did mythic raiding. I just got burnt out of needing, 300, 400, 500 attempts on a boss. Maybe I did a little bit in BFA, but mythic raiding is just completely ridiculous to me. And I fully understand that people like doing it, and there's a small niche community that enjoys it, and the race to world first and all that stuff. But even for someone like me, I hate mythic raiding. I absolutely hate it. But obviously, it's not intended for me. Heroic raiding, I think, is fun, but even heroic raiding, like the first raid, what is it? The first raid of Dragonflight, I actually did it with some friends. We got together, we did the heroic raid, but I just get so lazy to, and I actually would try the next raid, but I get lazy to maintain my gear, and you know what I mean? Like if my PvP gear was good for raiding and I could actually do good numbers, then I would do it. But I'm just way too lazy to farm all new gear to try the raid again. So I just give up after the first tier.
So in basically both Mythic Plus and the raid, you have seen a quite significant drop of players, more so in Mythic Plus compared to the raid. And perhaps one of the most common answers could be right now, for example, that, 10.1.5 came in, broke all of Mythic Plus, and now nobody wants to play because there is just Exodia dominating everywhere, which, makes sense on a first glance, but when you think about it, the numbers of the players in Season 2 before 10.1.5.
How many of you guys did Mythic Plus and then you weren't a paladin, a mage, a shadow priest, an evoker, and a guardian druid, and it just was awful? Like, I feel like he hasn't finished his thought, but I kind of feel like the balance being as bad as it is really, really bad. Like, I think it's way worse than maybe he's letting on, or maybe I'll say it, but it's actually crazy. It's only bad after you do a plus 20. Everything else is fair game. Yeah, but I mean, if these classes are pushing, I don't really know the numbers in Mythic Plus, but if they're able to push keys that are 3, 4, 5 further than you are, then I feel like that's a bit sketchy.
5 was still on track to be a third of the players of Season 1, well before patch 10.1.5 came through and warped the meta of Mythic Plus. So even that is not, it's not quite the full excuse or the full reason as to what is happening right now when it comes to the numbers. Now, what I found interesting about this and made me question the situation is that if you think about it, most players, I don't want to talk for everyone, but I would say the majority of players would be, I would say, content, maybe even almost happy with the rate and the speed and the amount of content being released in this expansion's patches. Okay. This is the expansion where we are starting to get in between patches, so patches like 10.0.5 or 10.1.5 and now 10.1.7 coming out in a week, where, actual content, right? We're not getting a full patch with just a selfie camera as an actual addition to the game. We're actually getting additions, extras, new game modes, new systems, etc., being introduced into the game, whether it is things like adding the trading post, adding things like dragon riding races, adding more bits of stories or game modes like the time rifts or the upcoming dream surges, reworks of specs and classes coming in between patches, etc.
I've actually enjoyed it. Although like things like Augmentation Evoker have broken the game, and like the Rep Paladin rework, all that stuff. Maybe those things, like I feel like whenever we get reworks, the classes become pretty crazy, but I've liked the little in-between patches. The fact that they're like doing reworks on honor talents, for PvP specifically, the fact that they're doing reworks on honor talents and it kind of changes up the meta, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's been really nice. Even the new trading post should come out tomorrow. That's something that I genuinely look forward to. So they are like trickling in these little bits of content, which has been nice. Obviously, there's problems that I've talked about many times with PvP and but I feel like it has been nice to get these patches,
etc. So you would be thinking that given the speed of the content being released, more players would be satisfied with the content available. When you compare this with the wasteland, the empty, barren desert that was the speed
look at this.
Patches in Shadowlands, there is a massive difference.
Oh my gosh.
A reminder to everyone who forgot that Shadowlands now holds the record of the slowest release and the longest gap between
the
expansion and the first patch.
Wait, I gotta see that again. I gotta back up it. Look at that. Look at the time gaps. That is nuts, man. Like if you look at Mists of Pandaria, it's almost 4 patches to the 1 in Shadowlands. That's completely insane. Was that days? So 218 days on like the first build. And then in like Mists of Pandaria, you almost had 3, or almost had 4. You did have 4 actually. That's crazy. And so I think in contrast to Dragonflight, it's been pretty good.
Longest gap between the release of the expansion and the first patch, because Shadowlands was released at the end of November and 9.1 came out on July the 6th. So we are talking about 7+ months before even getting the first patch even out of the expansion. So the gap in content is of course much shorter in this expansion, and you have presumably way more things to do. So you would be thinking that the player base would have more reasons to stay, busy, to stay entertained in the game. But once all is said and done, even though sure, fine, these numbers are not definitive, they are not really telling the full story of the amount of the players, etc., etc. There are always some, asterisks here and there, etc., etc. But you can still try to draw a few conclusions based on these numbers.
I think what it is for most of it, I feel like World of Warcraft this is what I think. I feel like World of Warcraft has been out for long enough at this point that most players, like in PvP, most players probably get to the rating that they feel like they can get to pretty easily, maybe 1800, maybe 2100, and then they're like, okay, I'm done, and they take a break till next patch. Maybe if you play Mythic Plus, you get your Keystone Master. Okay, I'm done. You're waiting. You don't really care about the in between patches. You don't really care about the trading posts. You don't really care about the Dragon Cup events and stuff like that. Like that's not enough for you to come back. It's like, every season, there's a new raid that comes out. I clear Heroic, and now I'm done. Or I get 1800 on my Mage, and I'm done. Or I get Keystone Master, or whatever it has, and then I'm done. So I feel like there's a lot of people with how many games there are out right now that aren't just sticking on World of Warcraft forever. It's like the major patch comes out, where it's a brand new season, and that's what they're interested in for a while, and then they're happy to just take a break and do something else, is what I think. So even though they're releasing like these in-between patches, which have been nice, it feels like for most people, it's just not enough to really care. I think, anyways.
Now, there might also be attached to this question as to why there are seemingly at least fewer players, some other caveats, perhaps also known as cope angles, some copium takes, like for example, we are getting through the summer. We have, more players interested in doing other things, going on vacation, taking a break from staying inside, etc., etc. You also have gotten the release of the later patch 10.1 and then 10.1.5 into the release of other anticipated games, for example, whether it was earlier on Overwatch 2, into Diablo 4, into Baldur's Gate, into now eventually Path of Exile, etc., etc. So maybe you have gotten more players thrown in to be busy somewhere.
I think there's some truth to that.
Example. But it is still overall an interesting thing to think about without having to be necessarily negative. I am one of those players, apparently it's not even that much of a widespread take, who believes that there is nothing wrong when playing an MMO or one of those, always online, always growing your character or your profile every day type of game, who believes that, if you're bored for a while, if you're bored for a bit, you can just stop playing, you can just go and enjoy something else. And
I agree with that 100%. I feel like World of Warcraft wasn't always like that, but I feel like with how many good games there are these days, I think taking breaks is good. Like, if you're done with the season, you're done with the season. Like, I think it's totally fine. Go play something else. Go play Baldur's Gate. Go play Diablo 4. Go play the new season of Path of Exile. Go play Overwatch. Like, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's totally fine that people are logging out. As long as there's enough stuff to do and it's fun enough when the new season comes out. But I feel like what ends up happening, if, like, a season is bad, like the rep patch, for example. When the rep patch came out, I feel like PvP was kind of ruined in a way. Like, I legitimately feel like PvP was ruined in such a way where people just... I want to say that it had, like, consequences to World of Warcraft PvP that we're still feeling right now. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like the patch was so bad and rets were so dumb, no offense, ret players, that people just, like, almost gave up on the whole season. You know what I mean? And I wonder if that's kind of happening in Mythic Plus right now with how crazy, augmentation evokers are, for example. But yeah.
And when you are interested again, you can come back. So I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but it's interesting that in the expansion where there might have been the largest amount and also more importantly the fastest amount of content being released, it is also simultaneously the one where it seems like the player numbers are getting lower faster compared at the very least to the numbers of the modern version of the game, from Legion to BFA to Shadowlands and now to Dragonflight. We will, of course, see how things will be changing in about a couple of months. So likely from now until then, this situation will likely continue. Not many players will have too many reasons in coming back until we start seeing the content available in 10.2 and what's going to come in 10.2, etc., etc. So after that patch releases, we will be able to see the growth, how many players were able to get interested back into the game. But for now, I guess we are left with this question of why the expansion with so much more and faster content releases doesn't seem to be doing nearly as well as expected at the very least. So I'm going to leave you with this question mark down in the comments. What do you think is the problem right now? If you think it's perhaps just a problem of maybe when the game is being released, maybe the type of content being released, maybe the competition of other games, maybe
I really think it's a mix of everything. You missed Legion Mythic Plus so much. Yo, thanks for the resub, dude. I think it's a mix of everything. So I think it's like World of Warcraft is at the point where people are happy to just log on for the season, and I think it's just gaming in general, right?
Miss Legion M Plus so much.
It's just gaming in general. Like, a new season comes out, you do the things you want, and then you're willing and happy to take a break because there's alternatives. And also, if the gameplay is not what you want, if it's not fun, if it's imbalanced, then you're also just willing to take a break till the next patch. Like, people are not as loyal as they once were, which I don't think is a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think it's just a fact of the community now. Like, if the game's not in a place that people like, they're willing to just jump ship and wait till the next patch. And also, like, people are just happy to, hit their little goals and then be done as well. Like, it's easy for them to just put down the game and take a break. That's what I think.
loss of trust of players towards Blizzard, created perhaps by the damages done by Shadowlands, for example. One of these many possible reasons, whichever you may think, it's the issue right now. But besides this, I'm going to leave you to the rest of your yet another reset of WoW on this Wednesday. So, with these things out of the way, we are starting as usual our goodbyes by thanking all of the Patreon supporters for the contribution and the help to the growth of the channel. Help which can still be given, as always, for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. So, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, now, interesting question or not, it's still time to go eat, because I have forgotten once again to be eating, and I'm now about 4 hours late on my dinner.
All right. There it is. That video is called If Dragonflight Looks Good, Then Why Are the Numbers So Bad? So if you guys want to check that out, I'll link it in the chat right now. If you guys liked the video, make sure you go leave it a like. I'll do that, and let's check out some of the comments. I've personally really enjoyed the expansion so far, minus the little 10.15 incident. We will pretend never happened. Yeah, that's the thing, right? There's like these little incidents that, like Absturge. What did Absturge just say? He said the ret patch created a very sour taste in everyone's mouth for Dragonflight PvP, and we're still dealing with that for sure. All right. We'll compare class numbers at 10.0 and 10.1 in Mythic Plus. Hunter is dead, Warrior is dead, Rogue is dead. Those people are not switching class. Mostly, they are just dropping the game. Yep. Healers are more and more frustrated with the state of the game. Yeah, so that's what happens. If your class sucks, like there are people who are willing to just re-roll and play something else. And there's also people who's like, if my class isn't good, I'm just not going to play. You know? So the content is stressful to play, fun but stressful because of how much is going on. You can't see the floor. Mechanics are wild. I'm a healer main also, and we know that that's looked like this season. The wall on the raid is insane. Guilds are cruising, then hit a wall. They simply can't get past, and it kills guilds as well. Raid nerfs aren't coming fast enough. Gearing and content has been the best it's been, but the gameplay in relation to how much stress versus how much fun it is has gotten out of whack now. That's interesting. I feel that, man. There are so many good things about Dragonflight, like the ability to play alts, and I feel like the gearing situation, all of that stuff is so good, but other problems. It's interesting that a lot of like people are feeling stressed out by the amount of mechanics in Mythic Plus and the raid. Like I said, I have zero interest in doing the Mythic raid, and it is amazing to me. It is absolutely amazing to me how few people are actually doing the Mythic raid. I have my own opinions about all of that and the raid difficulty and the amount of raids and stuff like that, but we'll save that for another time. The Season 2 dungeon pool is a big part of it. I feel like the dungeons are picked individually with little consideration how they fit into the overall Season 2 pool. They all have similar oppressive, slow slog type vibe besides Freehold. Ugh, I hate that. The reason, for me at least, is simple. There's no content that has there is content that has no value, and there's content I cannot get into unless I have 4 people to play with. Once you hit 20 plus the level of keys, your character is effectively stuck in 30-minute queues for a dungeon to be failed 1 or 5 minutes in. There isn't much you can do in the game. Yeah. The only repeatable and spammable content in the game is Mythic Plus, and it gets very tedious to run due to some affixes. Feel that. That's like a similar thing where, like, people hate on Solo Shuffle. I actually enjoy the gameplay of Solo Shuffle, but there's no other way to say it. It is unacceptable. It is unacceptable that there are 30-minute queues for DPS, right? Like, 30-minute queues for DPS is crazy. Crazy. Because if you're someone, like this happened to me yesterday, if you're somebody that has like an hour and a half, a lot of us are adults. I'm still playing World of Warcraft as a job, but a lot of us, we have a lot of responsibilities these days. The bills are tight. You're probably working overtime. You get home, you want to unwind. Maybe you have kids now. You got to look after your dog. Maybe you only have like an hour and a half to play. Who the hell wants to spend that in queue? You know what I mean? Who the frick wants to sit in a 30, 40-minute queue? Yeah, it's just not going to happen. So You know, I've heard people in my stream tell me that. I don't know what they could do about that. It's one of the biggest challenges facing World of Warcraft PvP right now. If solo shuffle is going to be the game mode, which a lot of people seem to have interest in it, you can't have 40-minute queues. You just can't. So I don't know what they need to do to fix that, but I'm not paid to know that, right? I'm not the one that has to come up with those answers. They got to figure it out because 40-minute queues are totally unacceptable. And I that comes from a place of love, but it's hemorrhaging players, like truly. It's crazy. But anyways, yeah, make sure you guys check out this video. Make sure you guys check out Aizen, and let me know what you guys think about this too.